At dawn on a cold morning in 1943, 20-year-old Lieutenant Jim Peterson climbs into the cockpit of his P-51 Mustang. In just a few hours, he will face life and danger at 25,000 feet above Nazi Germany. This is his story, and the story of thousands like him. Between 1939 and 1945, over 400,000 Americans served as aircrew in World War II. They flew everything from nimble fighters to massive bombers. But what was it really like to be up there when the sky itself became a battlefield? Before they could face the enemy, these young men, average age just 22, had to survive training that was almost as dangerous as combat itself. The path to becoming a combat pilot was challenging. From January 1941 to August 1945, while 19,164 cadets earned their pilot wings, an astounding 132,993 either washed out or were lost during training. That's a 40% loss rate before they ever saw combat. Training began with months of classroom instruction, navigation, meteorology, aircraft systems, and combat tactics. Then came hundreds of hours of flight time. At the start of the war, a pilot might complete training in just 6 months with 150 flying hours. By war's end, it took 18 to 24 months and up to 320 hours. They'd wake us at 4 a.m., calisthenics, breakfast, then ground school until noon. Afternoons were for flying, if the weather held. We lost 3 boys in my class alone. Training accidents, they called them, but gone is gone, whether it's over Texas or Germany. Fighter pilots learned to master complex aircraft like the P-51 Mustang, 1,695 horsepower of American engineering. With its Merlin engine, it could reach 437 miles per hour and climb to 41,900 feet. But all that power meant nothing without the skill to use it. Life at a combat airbase was a strange mixture of routine and tension. On operational days, crews were awakened at 3 a.m. The day began in darkness. Personal hygiene, a quick breakfast of powdered eggs and coffee, then the walk to the briefing hut. Here, intelligence officers would pull back the curtain, revealing the target map. The collective groan or silence told you everything about today's mission. Weather reports, enemy fighter concentrations, defensive positions, rally points, emergency procedures, all crammed into 30 minutes. Then came the most dreaded moment. Checking the crew roster to see who wasn't flying today and who might never fly again. The pre-flight ritual was sacred. These machines would carry them through danger. Every rivet, every wire, every drop of oil mattered. Ground crews worked through the night preparing aircraft. Engines were warmed, guns loaded, fuel tanks topped off. The relationship between aircrew and ground crew was sacred. These mechanics were entrusting pilots with their life's work, and pilots were betting their lives on that work. For fighter pilots, combat was intensely personal, a deadly game of chess played at 400 miles per hour. During the Battle of Britain, RAF pilots faced the most intense aerial combat in history. The average life expectancy of a Spitfire pilot was just 4 weeks, yet they climbed into their cockpits day after day, knowing the odds. Combat happened in seconds, a brief glimpse of an enemy aircraft, the split-second decision to attack or evade, the heart-stopping moment when tracers streaked past your canopy. Squadron leader James "Johnny" Johnson, Britain's top-scoring fighter ace, described it perfectly. You don't have time to be scared in combat. Fear comes before takeoff and after landing. In the air, training takes over. The famous Finger 4 formation, adopted from German tactics, became standard. 4 aircraft flying in a loose formation, each pilot responsible for watching his wingman's tail. Trust was everything. A moment's inattention could mean danger for your wingman. Some pilots were natural-born warriors. German ace Erich Hartmann flew 1,404 combat missions and was credited with 352 victories, more than any pilot in history. His secret? See, decide, attack, coffee break, cold professionalism in the face of danger. By 1944, American P-51 Mustangs were escorting bombers deep into Germany. These fighter pilots faced a difficult choice: stay with the bombers and fight defensively, or break off to engage enemy fighters and leave the big boys vulnerable. If fighter pilots faced individual combat, bomber crews endured collective challenges. 10 men crammed into a flying aluminum fortress surrounded by thousands of pounds of high explosives. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, 4 Wright Cyclone engines producing 1,200 horsepower each, cruising speed 182 miles per hour, service ceiling 35,600 feet. On paper, it was impressive. In reality, it was extremely dangerous. The statistics were sobering. In RAF Bomber Command, 51% of aircrew were lost on operations, 12% were lost in non-operational accidents, and 13% became prisoners of war. Only 24% survived the war unharmed. The greatest enemy wasn't German fighters, it was anti-aircraft fire, Flugzeugabwehrkanone, aircraft defense cannons. The Germans built a wall of fire over their cities. The famous German 88mm anti-aircraft gun could fire a 21-pound shell to 35,000 feet. It took 3,000 rounds to bring down one bomber, but when you're firing thousands of guns, the mathematics of danger become inevitable. Crews described flying through anti-aircraft fire as walking through a hailstorm made of hot metal. Inside the bomber, each man had his job. The pilot fought to keep the aircraft straight and level through the defensive fields. The navigator plotted courses around known gun positions. The bombardier waited for that perfect moment over the target. "Bandits, 2 o'clock high. I can see the target. Number 3 engine's been hit. Stay in formation. We're losing altitude." The moment of truth. Bomb bays open, aircraft vulnerable and flying straight into the storm of anti-aircraft fire. No evasive maneuvers, no matter how many shells burst around you. The mission came first, always. Getting to the target was half the mission. Getting home was often harder. Damaged aircraft, wounded crew members, dwindling fuel supplies, and the Luftwaffe wasn't finished with you yet. The human mind wasn't designed for this kind of stress. Combat fatigue, battle neurosis, or shell shock, whatever you called it, the psychological casualties were staggering. Throughout the war, stress casualties accounted for 15 to 30% of those wounded. Terms like lack of moral fiber and Focke-Wulf jitters became common. Bomber crews suffered more combat trauma than fighter pilots. Spending hours under constant threat took their toll. The symptoms were clear: trembling hands and inability to sleep, disturbing nightmares. Some pilots couldn't climb back into their aircraft. Others flew mission after mission until something broke inside them. The military struggled to understand what they were seeing. Was it cowardice, shell shock, combat exhaustion? Gradually, they realized these men weren't weak. They were human beings pushed beyond human limits. Treatment was basic: complete rest, hot meals, clean beds. The 1st Armored Division found that 50 to 70% of combat fatigue cases returned to duty within 3 days with proper care, but some never recovered. The lucky ones were rotated home after completing their tour. 25 missions for bomber crews, 50 for fighters, but many never made it that far. The average bomber crew had just a 50-50 chance of completing their first tour of operations. War drove innovation at an incredible pace. The aircraft that ended World War II bore little resemblance to those that started it. The North American P-51 Mustang revolutionized air warfare. With its laminar flow wing and powerful Merlin engine, it could escort bombs all the way to Berlin and back. German pilots called it the aircraft that won the war. The Germans weren't standing still. The Messerschmitt MiG-22, the world's first operational jet fighter, could outrun any Allied aircraft if they'd had more of them earlier. Technology saved lives. Radar gave early warning. Better navigation equipment helped crews find their home in bad weather. Improved armor protection and self-sealing fuel tanks meant more crews survived when hit. By war's end, aircraft like the B-29 Superfortress could fly 3,250 miles, carry 20,000 pounds of bombs, and fight at altitudes the Luftwaffe couldn't reach. The age of strategic air power had truly begun. Of the 400,000 Americans who served as aircrew in World War II, more than 40,000 never came home. They rest now in cemeteries from England to the Philippines, young men who gave everything in humanity's darkest hour. But their sacrifice was not in vain. Allied air power broke the back of Nazi Germany.